Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight, you're not just listening to Greek myths, you're drifting into them, slowly, quietly, like lantern light sliding across ancient stone. Tonight, we'll follow 4 stories that were never meant to be shouted, only remembered. A musician who tried to bargain with death using nothing but a song. A goddess who learned to rule both springtime and shadow. A rejected god who turned pain into craft, fire into purpose. And finally, a child born almost immortal, except for one small human place. These aren't stories of battles or triumphs. They're stories of limits, love, and the soft negotiations humans have always made with fate. Stories once whispered beside oil lamps, now told again, gently, for sleep. So before you get comfortable, take a gentle moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if these deep sleep history stories help you find peace, sleep better, or simply reflect on our shared journey through time. Now, close your eyes. Let your breathing slow. Let the noise of the day loosen its grip, and allow yourself to drift into these boring Greek myths for sleep, where history softens and rest begins. Tonight, you're not just listening to a myth, you're walking beside it, slowly, like footsteps on cool marble. Somewhere ahead, a musician is about to do the one thing every human secretly dreams of doing: to bargain with death, not with a sword, not with a spell, just with a song so gentle the underworld itself pauses to breathe. So get comfortable. Let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw unclench. And if your mind tries to race, we'll simply let it run out of steam in the dark. This is one of those Greek myths for sleep that doesn't need loud thunder or clashing armor to feel powerful. It only needs a quiet room inside your head and the smallest candle of attention. Orpheus, they say, could play a lyre the way winter plays with window glass, softly, patiently, changing the shape of silence without breaking it. His music didn't just sound beautiful, it reorganized the world around it. Not dramatically, not like a command, more like how a flame reorganizes a room. Suddenly the shadows agree to stand a little farther back, and even your breathing becomes smoother because the air feels safer. In these mythology bedtime stories, that kind of talent is never just a gift, it's also a door. And doors, as you might have noticed, tend to open both ways. Eurydice was not a goddess of storms or a warrior with a famous spear. She was the calm that makes a life feel livable, the ordinary happiness that doesn't announce itself, the kind of happiness you only understand when it's missing, like warmth in a house you thought would always be warm. Greek myths, unfortunately, are allergic to ordinary happiness. They treat it like something fragile on purpose, the way a child tests a soap bubble with a fingertip. One unlucky moment, one wrong step in grass, one sudden bite of fate, one sting you never see coming, and Eurydice is gone. Not gone like missing a train, gone like a door that does not reopen, no matter how politely you knock. And Orpheus does what grief always tries to do before it learns better. It negotiates. It insists there must be an exception. It searches for a loophole the way a sleepless mind searches for a perfect position on a pillow. So Orpheus walks down, 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 past the living world's last warm breath, into a place where sound is usually pointless, where words fall flat, where promises don't echo. And yet, sound is the only thing he brings. That's the strange confidence of love. It arrives with one tool and believes the world will cooperate. The descent is not a staircase with clean railings. It's more like slipping into a dream you didn't choose. Air cooling, colors thinning, the bright logic of daytime fading into a quieter kind of truth. In the underworld, everything that used to be urgent becomes slow. Even punishment becomes routine, like a wheel that turns because it has always turned. And then Orpheus plays. He plays in a place where most people would not bother trying. He plays as if beauty is still allowed, as if the rules can listen. Hades listens, Persephone listens. The river that divides life from death seems to hush for a moment, as if it's hearing its own story retold in a gentler voice. The torments, those endless loops of effort and failure, pause, not because they are forgiven, but because they remember what it feels like to stop trying for one breath. This is why people come back to history for sleep and to Greek myths for sleep, not for facts, but for that soothing idea that even the darkest systems can soften for a moment when something truly human appears. Orpheus is offered a deal that is almost kind. Eurydice may follow him back, but he must not look behind him until they reach the surface. One irreversible rule. It sounds simple, even childish, like the kind of rule you'd give to someone carrying a cup of water. Don't spill it, don't turn suddenly, keep going. But the underworld doesn't choose rules at random. The rule is designed to test the exact weakness of being human, because the rule isn't really about eyesight, it's about control, it's about trust, it's about the reflex to confirm what we love is still there, again and again, until confirmation becomes a cage. So they begin to climb. Stone steps, thin air, a faint suggestion of daylight ahead like a pale ribbon. Orpheus leads, and behind him, Eurydice follows, silent as morning fog. And as they climb, slowly, carefully, Orpheus hears nothing behind him. Not a footstep, not a breath. Silence again. Silence has always been his instrument, except now it feels like a threat. His mind, tired from grief, starts doing what tired minds do. It fills the gap with fear. What if she isn't there? What if the deal was a trick? What if the underworld is laughing quietly? The softest cliffhanger isn't, will he fight a monster? It's this, will he trust the unseen? Will he resist the urge to check? And the closer the air becomes to daylight, the more the silence feels unbearable, like a room waiting for bad news. At the very last moment, when the world is almost warm again, Orpheus turns. Just a glance, just a fraction of doubt given a face. Eurydice is there, and then she isn't. Not because Hades attacks, not because a beast drags her away, but because a rule is a rule, and grief has sharp edges. Some myths don't end with monsters. They end with one small human movement, the kind you make when you're exhausted, the kind you make when you want certainty more than you want peace. So tonight, if your mind keeps looking back, checking, rechecking, worrying, remember Orpheus. Remember how the underworld didn't need chains or claws. It only needed one irreversible rule and a human heart that couldn't stop verifying its own hope. Let that be your lullaby. You don't have to check. You don't have to prove. You can let the night hold what it holds, and let your breathing keep moving forward. In these mythology bedtime stories, the gentlest victory is not changing fate, it's resting anyway. And yet, not every story of the underworld is about loss. Some are about balance, about seasons, about a queen who belongs to spring and still knows the dark by name. After Eurydice fades from sight for the second and final time, the myth does something unusual. It doesn't rush to punish Orpheus. It doesn't thunder with divine anger. It simply leaves him there, standing at the threshold between worlds, holding a silence that no longer obeys him. And that quiet is heavier than any curse. This is where many mythology bedtime stories would normally end, with a lesson neatly tied in a bow. But Greek myths for sleep tend to linger, the way grief lingers, the way a thought repeats itself just as you're about to drift off. Orpheus doesn't scream, he doesn't strike the ground, he doesn't demand another chance, because part of him already knows what the underworld has just taught him. Some doors only open once, and some lessons cannot be softened by talent. So he turns back, not upward this time, but inward, and walks away from the place where bargaining is finished. Back in the living world, nothing looks broken. The trees still stand, the rivers still move, people still speak, and that's what makes loss so disorienting. The world refuses to reflect your internal collapse. Orpheus becomes a figure of quiet distance. He still plays, but the music has changed. It no longer tries to persuade the universe. It simply tells the truth of having tried. His songs become slower, narrower, almost careful, as if each note knows it cannot afford to hope too loudly. In the language of history for sleep, this is the moment where myth turns inward. The underworld journey was dramatic, yes, but the aftermath is where listeners recognize themselves. Because most of us don't lose things in a blaze of spectacle. We lose them quietly. We lose them while the world keeps going. And we are left with the strange task of learning how to breathe again without rearranging everything around us. Orpheus refuses to love again, not because love betrayed him, but because loving once so fully has taught him what it costs. Greek myths often punish excess, but here the punishment is subtle. Memory. Memory that doesn't fade quickly enough. Memory that follows him into every melody. And yet, the myth doesn't frame this as weakness. It frames it as consequence. Orpheus didn't fail because he was cruel or careless. He failed because he was human. Because he reached the limit of trust while exhausted. And exhaustion, as anyone listening late at night knows, makes even the gentlest rules feel impossible. This is why the story works so well as one of the oldest Greek myths for sleep. It understands something modern science would later confirm. The tired mind seeks certainty, not wisdom. When you are worn down, you don't ask what is best. You ask what will stop the anxiety fastest. Orpheus looks back not out of arrogance, but out of fatigue, out of the simple desire to end the waiting. And the myth doesn't scold him for that. It simply shows the cost. Over time, Orpheus becomes known less as a husband who failed and more as a musician who changed grief itself. His songs no longer promise rescue. They offer companionship. They sit beside sorrow instead of trying to fix it. In some tellings, animals gather again, not because they are enchanted, but because the sound feels familiar. It feels like something they've known since the beginning, the sound of endurance. This is where the myth quietly teaches its deepest lesson, especially for listeners drifting towards sleep. You are not required to solve your pain tonight. You are not required to retrieve what was lost. The underworld has rules you do not control, but you are allowed to rest beside what hurts. You are allowed to keep breathing without answers. Orpheus's music becomes less powerful in one sense and far more powerful in another. It no longer opens doors. It stays with you while the doors remain closed. And that, in the soft logic of mythology bedtime stories, is sometimes the truest mercy. So if you are listening now, feeling the echo of something you cannot change, let this part of the story settle. You don't need to replay every decision. You don't need to walk back down the steps in your mind. The rule has already passed. The night is not asking you to succeed. It is only asking you to stay. And slowly, as Orpheus learned, staying becomes its own quiet kind of music. As the years pass, the myth allows Orpheus to age, not dramatically, not heroically, but quietly. This is something many ancient stories forget to do, but mythology bedtime stories often remember. What happens after the moment everyone talks about? Orpheus becomes a figure you might pass on a road and not notice. He is no longer descending into the underworld or standing at its gate. He is simply living with the echo of a choice that cannot be undone. His music follows him like a shadow that has learned to behave. It doesn't leap ahead. It doesn't demand attention. It waits until someone is ready to hear it. In the soft logic of history for sleep, this is where the myth begins to soothe instead of sting. Because Orpheus learns something grief teaches very slowly. Not every silence needs to be filled. Some silences are structural. They hold the shape of what was once there, the way an empty chair still tells you how someone sat. When Orpheus plays now, he plays less often for crowds. He plays for himself, for the trees, for the evenings that stretch a little too long. And the world responds, not with miracles, but with familiarity. Animals pause again. Winds soften. Not because the music commands them, but because it feels honest. It feels tired in a way that doesn't ask to be fixed. Greek myths for sleep are full of gods who shout and heroes who rage, but Orpheus becomes something rarer, a man who lets his sorrow age naturally. He does not chase distractions. He does not turn his pain into spectacle. He allows it to settle, like dust in a room no one has entered for a while. In some versions of the story, Orpheus withdraws from human company entirely, choosing solitude over repetition. Not because people hurt him, but because explaining grief is exhausting and silence is more efficient. If you've ever lain awake at night feeling that words require too much effort, you already understand this part of the myth. Orpheus's refusal to remarry is not framed as bitterness. It is framed as fidelity, to memory, to truth, to the version of himself that loved without bargaining. And slowly, something unexpected happens. His music changes again. It becomes simpler, fewer flourishes, fewer attempts to persuade the universe. It starts to sound like acceptance, not resignation, but clarity. This is where the myth gently pivots from tragedy to usefulness. It stops asking what went wrong and begins asking what remains. What remains is breath. What remains is rhythm. What remains is the ability to sit with a feeling without demanding it leave. In mythology bedtime stories, this is the moment where listeners often drift closer to sleep because the narrative stops climbing and starts settling. There is no next test, no next deal, no next rule to break. There is only continuity. Orpheus walks familiar paths, he eats simple meals, he plays familiar chords, and in doing so, he models something ancient cultures understood deeply. Healing is not an event, it is a routine. The myth does not pretend this routine makes him happy in the old way, it makes him functional in a new one, and that is enough. Eventually, Orpheus's story intersects with the world again, not as a rescuer, but as a reminder. His presence carries a warning wrapped in gentleness. Some journeys should not be repeated in your mind. Some thresholds exist to be crossed only once. The underworld does not need frequent visitors. Neither does your regret. For those listening tonight, half awake, half dreaming, this part of the myth offers a quiet permission. You are allowed to stop replaying. You are allowed to let the narrative slow. You do not owe the past constant attention. Orpheus's greatest transformation is not musical, it is temporal. He learns how to live forward without pretending the past didn't happen. He carries it, lightly, the way you carry a memory that no longer needs to prove itself. And that, in the language of history for sleep, is where rest begins. There is a quieter layer of the Orpheus myth that ancient listeners would have understood instinctively, and modern listeners often feel without naming it. After the loss, after the descent, after the failure of the one irreversible rule, Orpheus becomes something like a boundary marker. Not a hero anymore, not a husband anymore, but a living reminder of where the human voice ends and the universe stops answering. In Greek myths for sleep, this role matters more than victory, because ancient cultures didn't tell stories only to celebrate success. They told stories to teach the nervous system where to stop pushing. Orpheus's presence in the world becomes strangely calming. People sense that he has already gone as far as one can go, that he has tested the furthest edge of longing, and because of that, he doesn't need to prove anything. When he plays, there is no agenda left in the sound, no persuasion, no bargaining. The music doesn't rise to impress, it settles, like water finding its level. This is why mythology bedtime stories often return to Orpheus not as a tragic figure, but as a soothing one. His grief is complete. It doesn't need attention. It doesn't need validation. It is matured into something almost stable. There's a difference, the myth suggests, between pain that is still searching for an exit and pain that has learned it will be staying a while. Orpheus crosses that line, and once he does, the story changes temperature. It cools. It becomes safe to touch. In some traditions, Orpheus teaches others, not formally, not with doctrines, but by example, by showing that you can carry an unbearable experience and still move gently through the world, that you can speak softly after screaming internally, that you can make beauty without demanding it fix you. This is one of the most important hidden lessons in history for sleep. The goal is not to erase distress. The goal is to regulate it, to bring it down from a roar to a hum, and Orpheus's life becomes a long demonstration of how that hum sounds. Even the landscape responds differently now. Mountains do not shift, rivers do not part. Instead, small things happen. A bird lingers longer, a night breeze slows, a listener breathes a little deeper without knowing why. These are not miracles, they are signs of equilibrium. And equilibrium, in ancient thought, was always more valuable than intensity. Greek myths often warn against extremes, of pride, of rage, of hope. Orpheus's extremity has already burned itself out. What remains is moderation, the most underrated virtue in myth and in life. And then, as myths tend to do, the story prepares for an ending that feels less like an ending and more like a release. Orpheus's death, in many versions, is not heroic. It is abrupt, even unfair. He is torn apart by forces that do not understand his refusal to rejoin ordinary life. But mythology bedtime stories do not linger on violence. They shift perspective. They pull the camera back. They show what matters after the noise fades. Orpheus's voice is said to continue. His head, carried by a river, still sings, not loudly, not desperately, but steadily, as if sound itself has learned something from him. The implication is not that Orpheus cheats death again. It is that expression outlasts explanation, that the part of us which learned how to sit with loss does not disappear when the body does. In the deepest layer of this myth, Orpheus is no longer trying to retrieve Eurydice. He is becoming something she would recognize: calm, reliable, unafraid of silence. For listeners drifting towards sleep, this matters, because sleep is also a surrender to not knowing, to letting go of vigilance, to trusting that you do not need to monitor everything to survive the night. Orpheus failed the rule because he could not trust the unseen. But by the end of his story, he has learned something subtler. Trust does not always mean success. Sometimes it means rest without resolution. This is why Greek myths for sleep endure. They do not promise comfort through answers. They offer comfort through recognition. If you were lying in the dark right now, listening to this story, your body already understands what Orpheus learned too late, that stillness is not the enemy, that silence does not always signal danger, that some things are safest when left unconfirmed. And so, as this chapter draws closer to its close, the myth gently hands responsibility back to you, not to fix, not to decide, but simply to be, to let your thoughts slow, to let your breathing find its own rhythm, to let the night do what it has always done best: hold what you cannot. As this first chapter of our mythology bedtime stories gently comes to rest, the story of Orpheus stops behaving like a legend and starts behaving like a memory. Not a sharp one, not the kind that interrupts you in the middle of the day, but the kind that sits quietly in the background, reminding you of something important without asking for your attention. In ancient times, listeners did not hear this myth as a warning meant to frighten them. They heard it as a map of limits, a calm explanation of where effort ends and acceptance begins. Greek myths for sleep were never designed to energize the listener. They were designed to steady them. And Orpheus, more than most figures, teaches steadiness through contrast. He shows what happens when love is strong enough to challenge death, and what happens when strength meets a boundary it cannot cross. By the end of his story, there is no dramatic triumph, no secret passage revealed, no clever trick that rewrites the rules of the universe. There is only understanding. And understanding in the quiet hours of the night is far more useful than hope, because hope keeps you awake. Understanding lets you rest. Orpheus's final gift to the world is not his music, not his bravery, not even his devotion. It is the demonstration of what it looks like to stop struggling against what cannot be undone. In the language of history for sleep, this is the moment the nervous system finally exhales. You are no longer waiting for something to happen. You are no longer bracing for a reversal. The story has shown you its edge and then invited you to step back from it. If you think about it, the underworld itself fades from the story at this point. It does not chase Orpheus. It does not taunt him. It simply resumes being what it has always been, a place that exists whether we look at it or not. That is another quiet lesson Greek myths offer to sleepless minds. Not every dark thought needs confrontation. Some lose their power when you stop visiting them. As you lie here now, listening, there is nothing left to solve in this chapter.
Eurydice is not coming back. Orpheus is not going down again. The rule has done its work. And because the story does not ask you to fix it, your body is allowed to soften. Your breathing can slow without fear of missing something important. Your mind can loosen its grip on outcomes. This is why the softest cliffhanger of this myth, will he look back, matters less than what comes after. What comes after is stillness, continuity, the realization that life continues even when desire is unfinished. For many listeners, this is the precise moment sleep begins to feel possible, not because everything is resolved, but because nothing else is demanded. And as the story settles, it gently prepares the ground for what comes next, because not every tale of the underworld ends in loss. Some end in balance. Some introduce a figure who moves between light and darkness without being destroyed by either. A queen who belongs to spring and still knows the dark by name. But for now, let Orpheus rest. Let his music fade into the background where it belongs. Let this chapter close the way it was meant to close, not with noise, not with drama, but with a sense of quiet completion. You don't need to follow the story any further tonight. The next one will be waiting, and it will arrive gently when your mind is ready to drift from loss into balance. If Orpheus shows us the price of looking back, Persephone shows us something quieter and stranger, the peace of living between two worlds. Not escaping darkness, not conquering it, but learning how to belong to it without disappearing. This is why the story of Hades and Persephone has lasted so long in mythology bedtime stories, in history for sleep. It doesn't rush, it doesn't shout. It explains the rhythm of loss and return the way the body understands it, slowly, season by season. Persephone begins as a name that tastes like sunlight. In the oldest tellings, she is not complicated. She is youth itself, flowers opening without effort, fields that do not yet know hunger, laughter that assumes tomorrow will be kind. Her mother, Demeter, loves her with the fierce, focused love of someone who believes love can stop time. Demeter is not unreasonable. She is agricultural. She measures life in cycles, in seeds, in harvests, in the fragile hope that if you care enough, the ground will respond. To Demeter, Persephone is not just a daughter, she is proof that the world still works. And that is why the loss that follows does not stay private. When Hades appears, the myth does not frame him as a sneering villain. He arrives the way gravity arrives. The underworld needs a queen, the way night needs a moon, not to threaten the sun, but to make darkness navigable. In many versions, Persephone is taken, abducted, because myth often speaks in extremes when it tries to explain emotional truth. But the deeper discomfort of the story begins after the descent, not during it. Persephone enters the underworld and does not vanish. She adapts. She learns its rules, which are not cruel, but precise. Time behaves differently there. Emotions do not rush. Everything waits its turn. Persephone becomes someone who can look at shadows without panicking, someone who can hear grief without absorbing it, someone who can sit still in places where nothing grows and still feel whole. This transformation is the quiet center of the myth. Persephone does not remain the same goddess of spring, but she does not lose herself either. She becomes something more complex. And above ground, Demeter grieves in a way that changes the planet. Her sorrow is not poetic, it is functional. Crops fail, fields refuse to cooperate, the soil becomes tired, not because it is cursed, but because care has withdrawn. Humanity learns something uncomfortable here. The gods they depend on are not always emotionally available. Winter in this myth is not punishment, it is absence. It is what happens when nourishment pauses. And because ancient people needed to survive this absence, the myth does what myths do best. It finds a compromise, not out of kindness, but out of necessity. The gods negotiate because a frozen world benefits no one. Persephone will spend part of the year above, part below. And suddenly, the underworld stops being only a place of endings. It becomes a calendar, a schedule, a shared agreement between light and dark. This is the viral heart of the story, the reason it resonates so deeply with listeners drifting toward sleep. The underworld is no longer an enemy, it is a phase. Persephone's return brings spring. Her descent allows the world to rest. Growth is not constant, joy is not permanent, but neither is loss. If you listen closely, this myth is not really about kidnapping at all. It is about the first time humanity tried to explain depression, winter, grief, and recovery without having those words. Persephone is not rescued, she is integrated. And that is why this story is so effective as mythology for sleep. It teaches the nervous system that darkness does not mean disappearance. It means delay, transition, pause. Persephone becomes queen of the underworld without surrendering her identity as goddess of spring. She belongs to both, and in that belonging, the world learns how to breathe again. This is not victory, it is balance, and balance, more than triumph, is what allows rest. As Persephone settles into the underworld, the myth deliberately slows its pace, as if inviting the listener to breathe more deeply. This is where mythology bedtime stories become less about events and more about states of being. Persephone does not spend her days imprisoned or pleading. She observes. She learns. The underworld, contrary to fear, is not chaotic. It is ordered, patient, and strangely honest. Nothing pretends to be alive there. Nothing rushes to become something else. In that stillness, Persephone begins to understand a kind of calm that the surface world never taught her. Above ground, everything grows too fast. Buds rush into bloom. Harvests demand constant attention. Joy is loud and fleeting. Below ground, time stretches. Waiting is normal. Silence is not suspicious. Hades, often misunderstood, does not rule through cruelty. He rules through boundaries. Things stay where they belong. Endings are respected. Persephone, as queen of the underworld, learns the dignity of limits. She learns that not everything needs light to be meaningful. This is why the myth resonates so strongly with history for sleep audiences. It reassures the tired mind that darkness does not automatically mean danger. It can mean containment. Meanwhile, Demeter's grief above ground grows heavier, not sharper. It spreads slowly, like cold soil. She does not curse the world in anger. She simply stops nourishing it. And the earth responds exactly as any body does when care is withdrawn. It conserves. Leaves fall. Growth pauses. Life does not end. It waits. Ancient listeners would have understood this intimately. Winter was not symbolic. It was real hunger, real fear, real stillness. The myth of Hades and Persephone gave that experience a shape and a rhythm. It told people, this absence has a reason, and it has an end, but not yet. The gods, watching mortals struggle, recognize a problem that cannot be solved with force. You cannot command crops to grow. You cannot threaten the soil into generosity. So negotiation becomes necessary. This is one of the quietly radical ideas in Greek mythology. Even gods must compromise with natural cycles. Persephone's divided year is not a punishment, it is a solution, a treaty between grief and survival. When Persephone returns to the surface, spring does not explode, it unfolds, slowly, carefully, as if the world is stretching after a long sleep. Seeds remember what to do. Animals test the air. Humans exhale. This is not joy as celebration, it is relief as proof of continuity. And when Persephone descends again, the world does not panic. It prepares, it stores, it rests. This is why the underworld becomes a calendar in this myth, not a threat, but a schedule, not an enemy, but a phase. For listeners drifting towards sleep, this idea is profoundly calming. You do not need to be happy all the time to be okay. You do not need constant growth to be alive. Some seasons exist so that the system can recover. Persephone's power lies not in choosing one world over the other, but in moving between them without breaking. She becomes a bridge, and bridges do not rush. They hold, they wait, they allow passage. In this sense, Persephone is less a victim and more a pattern, a model of resilience that does not rely on denial. The myth is careful not to glamorize her descent, but it also refuses to frame it as total loss. That refusal is the story's gift. It teaches that sadness can be structured, that grief can have a timetable, and that recovery does not erase what came before. As you listen, perhaps you can feel your own internal seasons responding. The parts of you that are tired are allowed to rest. The parts that are quiet are not broken. They are simply in winter. And winter, as Persephone teaches, is not the end of the story.
There is another quiet shift that happens in the story once Persephone accepts her rhythm between worlds, and it is one that mythology bedtime stories linger on with particular care. Persephone is no longer simply a daughter who is lost, nor only a bride who has been taken. She becomes a reference point, a center of gravity that allows two opposing realms to remain stable without collapsing into chaos. In the underworld, she brings memory of light without trying to recreate it. She does not plant flowers where nothing can grow. She does not demand warmth where cold is necessary. Instead, she carries an inner spring, measured, contained, patient. This is what makes her rule different from domination. It is stewardship. Hades, ruling beside her, does not soften the laws of death, but he allows something new to exist within them: continuity. The dead are not rushed. They are not tormented for drama. They are processed, remembered, given a place. Persephone learns that this too is a form of care. Above ground, Demeter slowly learns a different lesson. Her grief does not vanish when Persephone returns for the first time. It changes texture.
It becomes cautious, a joy that does not fully trust itself yet. She watches her daughter walk through fields again, and she knows now that presence is never guaranteed. So she adjusts. She becomes a goddess not only of growth, but of preparation. She teaches humanity how to store grain, how to plan, how to respect seasons instead of fighting them. This is a crucial detail often missed in quick retellings. Demeter does not simply celebrate Persephone's return, she restructures life around the certainty that Persephone will leave again. This is the deeper intelligence of the myth. It is not about denial of loss, but accommodation of it. In History for Sleep, this kind of intelligence is deeply soothing. It tells the listener that stability does not come from permanence, it comes from rhythm, from knowing when to act and when to pause. Persephone's movement between worlds becomes predictable, and predictability is what allows rest. Humans no longer fear winter as an endless punishment. They recognize it as part of a cycle they can survive. They learn that absence can be prepared for, and return can be welcomed without panic. Persephone herself changes most visibly in how she holds power. She is not loud, she does not command attention. Her authority is felt in how smoothly things function when she is present. This is a form of leadership that ancient audiences would have recognized immediately. The best ruler is the one who makes the system feel calmer, not more intense. In the underworld, Persephone becomes the reason judgment can be fair without being cruel. She understands both longing and letting go, both hope and finality. This dual understanding is rare, and it is why she belongs where she does. For those listening late at night, this part of the story often lands in the body before it lands in the mind. You may notice your breathing settling, your thoughts spacing out, not because the story is empty, but because it is complete in its logic. Nothing is unresolved here. The tension has been redistributed into balance. Persephone does not escape the underworld, and the underworld does not imprison her. They coexist, and that coexistence becomes the model by which the natural world organizes itself. Day follows night, growth follows rest, return follows absence. The myth gently suggests that peace is not the elimination of darkness, but the ability to move through it without losing orientation. Persephone keeps her name, her memory, her voice in both realms. She does not fragment, she integrates, and integration, more than happiness, is what allows the nervous system to finally stand down. This is why the story continues to work as mythology for sleep after thousands of years. It does not rush toward resolution, it settles into it. And as you listen, you may feel the same thing happening inside you. The parts of you that belong to light can rest. The parts that belong to shadow are not being judged. They are simply being placed where they make sense.
As Persephone's role settles fully into place, the myth begins to speak less about gods and more about time itself. This is a subtle shift, and one that mythology bedtime stories handle with great care. The story stops asking who is right or wrong, and instead asks what endures. Persephone's divided existence teaches the world that time is not a straight line of gain and loss, but a breathing pattern. Inhale, spring returns. Exhale, winter descends. Neither phase is a mistake. Neither needs to be corrected. This is where the idea of the underworld as a calendar becomes most clear. The underworld marks not an end, but a season of pause. Hades rules a domain where nothing grows because growth has already happened. His realm is not empty, it is full of what has been. Persephone, moving between realms, becomes the keeper of that understanding.
She carries the memory of growth into stillness and the memory of stillness back into growth. Ancient listeners would have felt comfort in this. It meant that nothing they endured was wasted. Cold months were not meaningless suffering. They were part of a larger structure that allowed life to return. This is why Demeter's role changes so profoundly. She no longer tries to prevent winter. She learns how to work with it. She teaches humans when to sow and when to wait, when to hope and when to store what they already have. This is not resignation, it is wisdom. In history for sleep, wisdom often appears not as excitement, but as relief. The relief of knowing you are not required to bloom all the time. Persephone herself embodies this lesson quietly. When she walks the earth, flowers respond, but she does not cling to them. She knows they will fade and that they will come again. When she returns to the underworld, she does not mourn her descent. She takes her place, knowing it is temporary and necessary. This calm acceptance is what transforms her from a symbol of loss into a symbol of continuity. The myth does not romanticize her journey, but it dignifies it, and dignity is deeply soothing to a restless mind. As listeners lie awake, perhaps counting thoughts instead of sheep, this story offers a different rhythm to follow. Not endless striving, but measured return. Not permanent light, but reliable cycles. Persephone's life suggests that peace comes not from escaping difficult seasons, but from recognizing their role. The underworld is not something to fear when it has a schedule. Darkness is less threatening when it has an end. And even when that end is distant, knowing it exists is enough to let the body rest. This is why the myth remains one of the most effective mythology for sleep narratives ever told. It aligns the human nervous system with the natural world. It whispers that rest is not failure. Stillness is not absence. Waiting is not wasted time. As Persephone moves once more below, the world above does not collapse. It adjusts. And in that adjustment, humanity learns one of its earliest survival skills: patience shaped by trust. As this chapter gently prepares to close, the myth of Hades and Persephone stops behaving like an explanation and starts behaving like reassurance. It no longer needs to convince, it simply remains. Persephone's movement between worlds has become so regular that it no longer feels dramatic, it feels dependable. And dependability, especially in mythology for sleep, is one of the most comforting qualities a story can offer. The ancient listener did not need to be reminded that winter was cold or that loss was painful. They needed to know that the rhythm would hold, that something older and steadier than fear was at work. Persephone, in her quiet authority, becomes the proof of that steadiness. She does not rush her returns, and she does not resist her descents. She trusts the pattern. And in trusting it, she teaches everyone else how to loosen their grip. This is perhaps the most important psychological gift of the myth. It does not tell you to be brave, it does not tell you to be hopeful, it tells you to be patient, to allow time to do what force cannot. In the underworld, Persephone is not diminished by darkness, she is clarified by it. Her presence gives shape to endings, and shape makes endings bearable. Above ground, her absence gives meaning to return, and meaning makes joy sustainable. This is why the myth feels so complete by the time it ends. Nothing is unresolved. Everything has been placed. Loss has a season, rest has a season, growth has a season, and none of them are permanent. For someone listening late at night, perhaps feeling suspended between days, this structure can feel like a hand on the shoulder, not pushing, not pulling, just reminding you that where you are right now has a place in the larger pattern. You are not behind, you are not broken, you are simply in one phase of a cycle that knows how to continue without your supervision. As Persephone descends once more, the story does not follow her with anxiety. It stays above ground, watching the world prepare. Granaries fill, fires are banked, lives slow down. This is not despair, it is wisdom in motion. And as Persephone returns again, the story does not cling, it opens. Buds appear, water moves, life resumes without rushing. This balance, this quiet agreement between light and dark is the true ending of the chapter. Not triumph, not rescue, but coordination. And coordination is what allows systems to rest. So as this chapter settles, you may notice your own thoughts settling with it. The need to resolve everything fades. The urge to stay alert softens. You are allowed to be exactly where you are in your own cycle. Nothing needs to be forced forward tonight. The myth has done its work. It has shown you that even the underworld can be part of a living calendar, and that even darkness can be trustworthy when it has a rhythm. And now, gently, the story lifts its gaze upward, away from the patient depths below, toward the bright heights of Olympus. Because not all who dwell in light are accepted by it, and sometimes rejection itself becomes the beginning of a different kind of strength.
Hephaestus enters the world the way an unwanted truth enters a beautiful room, suddenly and with a silence that feels heavier than noise. In some versions of the myth, Hera brings him into being alone, determined to prove that she too can create without Zeus. In other tellings, the details are less dramatic, almost cruelly simple. A child is born, and the judgment arrives immediately. Olympus is a place built on symmetry. Everything there gleams with balance, proportion, effortless perfection. Beauty is not just admired, it is assumed. And so when Hephaestus is seen, uneven, limping, visibly different, he does not fit the story Olympus tells about itself. There is no long debate, no careful reflection. Rejection in Greek gods' bedtime stories often arrives quickly because the gods mirror human reflexes at their most honest. What cannot be integrated is removed, and so Hephaestus is thrown, not pushed gently aside, not quietly hidden, but hurled from the certainty of the sky into the patience of the earth. The fall is not symbolic. It is long, violent, and final in its intention. Olympus assumes that distance will solve the problem, but myths rarely reward that assumption. Hephaestus survives, and this survival is the first strange turning of the story, because the places he lands are not places of glory. They are caverns, volcanic hollows, forgotten depths where heat lingers without applause. These are spaces Olympus never learned to value, slow, dark, resistant to spectacle. And it is here, away from the gaze that judged him, that Hephaestus begins to listen. The earth does not ask him to be beautiful. Fire does not care how he walks. Metal does not demand symmetry, it demands patience. In these quiet spaces, pain stops being something to hide and becomes something to work with. His body, once the reason for his rejection, becomes the reason for his mastery. Each strike of the hammer is deliberate. Each breath is measured. The forge becomes his language, and repetition becomes his teacher. This is why the myth resonates so deeply with history for sleep audiences.
It is not a story about revenge or triumph. It is a story about regulation, about taking chaos and giving it rhythm. Hephaestus does not heal by being accepted again. He heals by becoming absorbed in process. Fire becomes predictable. Metal responds to care. Over time, what began as exile becomes expertise. And quietly, without announcement, Olympus begins to need what it discarded. Thrones crack, armor fails. Power, it turns out, requires infrastructure. Even the most perfect gods cannot rule without tools. And so, one by one, they come to Hephaestus, not with apologies, but with requests. The myth does not pretend this is justice. It simply observes something more enduring. Usefulness has gravity. Hephaestus returns to Olympus not as a son seeking approval, but as a craftsman whose absence would collapse the system. His limp does not disappear. His difference is not erased. Instead, it becomes irrelevant. And this is the deeper comfort of the story. You do not need to become flawless to become essential. Sometimes the very traits that exclude you from one world are what allow you to build another. As this chapter unfolds, the myth invites the listener to consider a gentler idea of worth, not the kind measured by beauty or belonging, but the kind forged through consistency, through showing up to the same fire again and again until it answers you. For a sleepless mind, this is profoundly calming. It suggests that rejection does not require urgency, that being cast out does not mean being lost, that sometimes the earth below is not a punishment, but a workshop. After the fall, time does something unusual for Hephaestus. It slows down. Not because the world becomes kinder, but because survival requires attention. In the depths where he lands, there is no audience to impress and no standard to meet. The earth does not rush him. Heat rises and settles. Stone remembers pressure. Metal waits. This is where the myth quietly shifts from rejection to craft, from judgment to practice. Hephaestus begins to understand that pain, when it is no longer argued with, can become instruction. Each ache in his body teaches him leverage. Each imbalance teaches him counterweight. The forge does not reward speed, it rewards consistency. In Greek gods' bedtime stories, this is a rare kind of power, the power of repetition without spectacle. Day after day, Hephaestus returns to the fire. He listens to it. He learns when to push and when to pause. Sparks become signals rather than threats. The hammer's rhythm becomes steady enough to calm the breath. This is why the forge is described as loud but soothing, violent but controlled. It mirrors the nervous system learning regulation. Over time, objects emerge, first crude, then precise. Hinges that hold without creaking, blades that bend instead of breaking, chains that restrain without cruelty. These are not weapons of domination, they are tools of order. And order, in myth, is always a kind of mercy. The earth responds to his patience. Volcanic heat becomes reliable. Metals soften when treated with respect. Hephaestus learns a truth Olympus never taught him. Usefulness grows from attention, not approval. This is the viral core of his story, the idea that being cast out can become a workshop, that rejection can concentrate rather than scatter a life. Meanwhile, Olympus continues its flawless performance, unaware that it is building a dependence it does not yet recognize. Thrones are admired until they crack. Armor gleams until it fails at the wrong moment. Even gods discover that beauty without maintenance is fragile. And slowly, inevitably, need travels downward. Requests are sent. Orders are implied. Hephaestus answers without rushing. He does not demand apologies. He does not rehearse resentment. He simply works. The tools he creates do not announce their maker. They do their job. This is another quiet lesson the myth offers to sleepless minds. Effectiveness does not require vindication. You can be essential without being celebrated. When Hephaestus returns to Olympus, it is not as a reconciled child, but as a necessary presence. His difference remains visible, his limp remains real, yet it no longer defines his worth. In a system that worships perfection, reliability becomes revolutionary. Hephaestus's forge introduces something the gods did not know they lacked: durability. And durability, unlike beauty, improves with use. For listeners easing towards sleep, this chapter lands softly because it removes urgency from self-worth. It suggests that healing does not need a grand arc. It can be circular, it can be repetitive, it can be built one careful strike at a time. If your mind is tired of proving itself, Hephaestus offers another path. Build quietly, return to the fire, let skill accumulate, and allow time to do the persuading.
As Hephaestus's work deepens, the myth quietly reframes what strength looks like. On Olympus, strength is effortless. Lightning strikes without fatigue. Beauty shines without labor. Authority assumes obedience. But in the forge below, strength is earned minute by minute. It sweats, it pauses, it listens. Hephaestus learns that control does not come from domination, but from understanding materials well enough to stop forcing them. Metal resists when rushed. Fire flares when ignored. Pain returns when pride interferes. So he adjusts. He learns the difference between pressure and patience, between impact and intention. This distinction becomes his real inheritance, not godhood, not lineage, but discernment. In Greek gods' bedtime stories, discernment is rare and powerful. It is the ability to choose the right amount of force and no more. Over time, Hephaestus's creations grow more subtle. He no longer forges only what is requested. He begins to solve problems the gods did not know how to name. Doors that close softly, mechanisms that move without noise, nets that restrain without harm. These objects carry a philosophy inside them. Stability is kinder than spectacle. This philosophy is why Olympus eventually shifts around him, not because the gods change their values, but because systems adapt to what works. Hephaestus becomes the quiet center of an empire that once rejected him. And still, the myth does not allow him a simple emotional victory. His relationships remain complicated. Love does not arrive neatly. Recognition comes mixed with dependence. He is needed, but not fully understood. This detail matters. It keeps the story honest. Healing does not erase complexity. It teaches you how to live with it. For the sleepless listener, this honesty is grounding. It removes the pressure to resolve every emotional thread before rest is allowed. Hephaestus does not become serene because life becomes fair. He becomes steady because he has learned where to place his energy. His forge is not an escape. It is a boundary, a place where he can translate discomfort into function. This is why pain becomes skill in this myth, not because pain is noble, but because it is unavoidable. What matters is what you do with it once it arrives. Hephaestus shows that you can metabolize pain slowly, without drama, until it becomes something that supports others. The gods sit on his thrones without thinking about the hours inside them. Warriors wear his armor without noticing its balance. Systems rely on his work without acknowledging its origin. And Hephaestus allows this. He does not chase credit. He understands something deeper. Anonymity can be peaceful. This is another gift of the story for History for Sleep. It suggests that being useful without being visible can calm the nervous system. You do not need to be seen to be safe. You do not need applause to rest.
As the myth progresses, Hephaestus's limp becomes almost symbolic, not of weakness, but of continuity. It reminds everyone that perfection is not required for contribution. The world does not collapse because one god walks unevenly. It becomes more resilient because he does. And in that reversal, the story completes another quiet turn. Rejection has not disappeared, but it has lost its authority. Olympus can judge appearances, but it cannot function without what lies beneath. Hephaestus has built a reality strong enough to outlast opinion. For a listener drifting towards sleep, this realization often arrives as a physical release. Shoulders drop, jaw loosens, breath deepens. The story has moved from conflict into containment. Nothing urgent remains. The forge continues. The fire burns at a steady temperature, and the night, like the earth, holds it all without comment. As the myth moves deeper into Hephaestus's life, something subtle but essential happens. The story stops asking whether Olympus was right to reject him and begins asking what kind of world rejection creates. This is where Greek gods' bedtime stories often slow into something almost philosophical, because the answer is not dramatic. Rejection does not make Hephaestus bitter in the way Olympus expects, it makes him precise. When you are not invited into the room where decisions are made, you learn how decisions actually work. Hephaestus watches systems from below. He sees how power leans on objects it pretends not to notice, how authority collapses without hinges, without joints, without balance. This knowledge does not make him resentful, it makes him careful. He learns that real influence is quiet and structural. The forge becomes not just a place of labor, but a place of observation. Every request that comes down from Olympus reveals something about the gods themselves. They ask for weapons, but what they need is restraint. They ask for armor, but what they fear is vulnerability. Hephaestus builds what is asked for, but he builds it in a way that corrects excess. His creations are strong without being reckless, protective without being aggressive. In this way, he becomes an unspoken educator of the gods. He teaches through function, not lecture. This is one of the most calming elements of the story for History for Sleep listeners. It suggests that you do not need to argue your value, you can embed it into what you make. Over time, the forge hum becomes part of the world's background. The gods stop questioning where the tools come from, they simply expect them to work. And they do, consistently, predictably. This predictability is what allows the myth to soften. There is no sudden confrontation, no apology scene, no reversal of roles. Instead, there is normalization. Hephaestus's presence becomes ordinary, and ordinariness is power's greatest concession. When something becomes normal, it becomes necessary. The myth also allows space for sadness here, and that honesty matters. Hephaestus is not untouched by his origins. There are nights when the fire burns lower and memory returns, when the sound of laughter from Olympus carries down and reminds him where he began. But those moments do not undo his work. They pass through him like heat through metal, changing shape, not shattering form. This is another quiet lesson the story offers to sleepless minds. Stability does not mean the absence of old pain. It means pain no longer controls the structure of your life. Hephaestus's mastery grows not because he forgets rejection, but because he no longer organizes himself around it. The forge remains his center, steady and available. And eventually, the myth prepares us for the idea that being essential does not always feel satisfying. It feels grounding. Hephaestus is surrounded by fire, but he is calm. Surrounded by noise, but he is focused. This calm competence becomes his true identity, not the god who fell, not the god who limps, but the god who builds and repairs. For listeners lying awake, this identity is deeply reassuring. It suggests that worth can be quiet, that contribution does not have to announce itself, that even when recognition is uneven, purpose can remain stable. As the chapter edges toward its close, the forge continues its rhythm. Hammer, heat, pause, repeat. The myth does not rush us onward. It lets the sound settle. It lets the idea sink in. Pain did not destroy Hephaestus. It trained him. Rejection did not end his story. It redirected it. And the world, slowly and without ceremony, reshaped itself around what he made. As this chapter reaches its quiet completion, the story of Hephaestus no longer feels like a myth about exile. It feels like a lesson about placement. Nothing in his life was corrected. His body was not reshaped. His past was not revised. What changed was context. He was moved from a place that worshipped appearance to a place that respected function. And in that shift, his entire existence found coherence. This is why Greek gods' bedtime stories often return to Hephaestus, not as a tragic figure, but as a stabilizing one. He is the god who proves that value does not always announce itself. Sometimes it hums steadily in the background, holding everything else together. Olympus continues to shine, but now its brightness rests on something quieter and darker beneath it. The forge never closes. The fire never flares out of control. Hephaestus's work does not end because systems never stop needing maintenance. And maintenance, unlike glory, is a lifelong rhythm. For the sleepless listener, this is profoundly reassuring. It means you do not have to resolve your entire story to rest. You only need to know where to return tomorrow. Hephaestus does not chase acceptance anymore. He does not argue with the sky. He knows where he belongs. And belonging, in this myth, is not about being welcomed. It is about being useful in a way that feels honest. As the sound of the hammer fades, the chapter prepares us for the final movement of the night. Because after rejection, after balance, after craft, Greek myth turns to its most dangerous question of all. Can destiny be cheated? The forge quiets, the fire lowers, and somewhere a child is about to be born, marked not by imperfection, but by prophecy. Achilles enters the world beneath a shadow so clear it feels almost contractual. Not a vague warning, not a distant possibility, but a promise spoken softly by fate itself. This child will burn brightly, and he will not last. In Greek myth for sleep, few beginnings are so calm and so heavy at the same time. Because before Achilles ever lifts a spear, before his name gathers echo and legend, his story is already negotiating with an ending. And standing closest to that ending is his mother, Thetis. Thetis is not a mortal woman learning fear for the first time. She is ancient water. She is the sea that changes shape without apology. She has watched empires erode and storms forget themselves. And yet, when it comes to her child, she reacts in the most human way imaginable. She refuses the terms. Thetis marries Peleus, not because destiny is romantic, but because the gods find it safer. In mythology, even love can be a risk management strategy. A sea goddess and a mortal king produce a child who belongs fully to neither world. Achilles is born between realms, just like Persephone, but with a different burden. Persephone carries balance, Achilles carries expectation. From the moment he breathes, prophecies circle him like quiet smoke. They do not shout, they wait. They say there are two futures, a long, forgettable life, or a short one that will never be forgotten. This is the cruel elegance of Greek fate. It does not force, it offers choices that are not really choices at all. Thetis hears these whispers and does what so many parents wish they could do. She tries to edit destiny at the source. In some versions, she burns away the mortal parts of Achilles each night, holding him in flame while he sleeps, believing that love and persistence can purify vulnerability. In the most famous telling, she lowers him into the river Styx, the water of forgetting and permanence, gripping him by the heel. The water seals him, protects him, makes him almost untouchable. Almost. And that small exception, the place where her hand held him, is where the myth settles its gaze. Not on the hero's strength, but on the illusion of total control. Achilles grows, radiant and terrifying, trained, celebrated, unstoppable. And yet, the story never lets us forget the quiet truth established at his birth. Glory does not cancel risk. Protection is never complete. Love can reduce danger, but it cannot erase fate. For listeners easing towards sleep, this opening matters deeply because it speaks directly to the nervous system's secret fantasy that vigilance can guarantee safety. Achilles' story gently disagrees. It says you can do everything right and still leave a small place uncovered, and that this is not failure, it is condition. Thetis's effort does not make her foolish, it makes her recognizably human. Even gods, the myth suggests, struggle when love meets uncertainty. Achilles' near invulnerability becomes both his power and his tension. The world treats him as unstoppable, but the story knows better. And by knowing better, it softens the listener's grip on control. If Achilles can be almost immortal and still vulnerable, perhaps you do not need to be perfectly prepared to rest tonight. The myth does not rush this realization. It lets it breathe. It lets the image of a mother's hand at a child's heel linger, not as a mistake, but as a truth about care itself. To protect something, you must touch it, and wherever you touch, you cannot shield completely. This is the quiet paradox at the heart of Achilles' beginning, and as the chapter unfolds, it will not ask you to fear destiny, but to understand it as something that can be held gently, even when it cannot be changed.
As Achilles grows, the myth slows its pace again, not to describe battles or training, but to linger on atmosphere, the quiet pressure of expectation that settles over a child long before he understands it. This is one of the reasons myth for sleep returns to Achilles, not as a warrior first, but as a son. Thetis watches him learn to stand, to run, to test the edges of his strength, and every movement carries a double meaning. Each success confirms the prophecy's promise of greatness. Each stumble reminds her of the place she could not protect. The heel becomes less a location and more a concept, a reminder that invulnerability is always partial. In Greek storytelling, this is not meant to frighten, it is meant to instruct. Achilles is raised knowing that his life will be measured differently. He is offered a choice that is not really a choice at all, and the adults around him treat it as destiny rather than burden. But the myth, when told softly, reveals something else. Achilles does not rush toward glory out of arrogance. He moves toward it because the world around him has already decided what he is for. This is the quieter tragedy beneath the louder one. Peleus, his father, tries to anchor him in ordinary things: names, lineage, honor, the steady rules of human kingship. But even Peleus knows the truth. Ordinary life will never quite fit. Achilles belongs to a generation shaped by stories before experience, and this shapes how he rests, how he waits, how he listens. Thetis, meanwhile, learns the cost of her intervention. She has delayed harm, not erased it. She has reduced risk, not eliminated it. And that distinction becomes the emotional spine of this chapter. In mythology for sleep, such distinctions are deeply calming because they mirror reality without demanding correction. Thetis's love does not fail. It functions. It buys time.
It creates space. It gives Achilles a childhood, even if it cannot guarantee his future. This is what the myth wants the nervous system to understand. Protection is not all or nothing. Safety is often temporary and still meaningful. As Achilles trains, mentors like Chiron teach him skill, restraint, and rhythm. He learns when to strike and when to pause, when to advance and when to hold back. Yet even these lessons carry a shadow. Every technique is practiced with the knowledge that one day it will be used in earnest. Achilles' strength grows, but so does the weight of inevitability. For listeners drifting toward sleep, this section of the myth gently loosens the belief that preparation equals control. Achilles is prepared beyond measure, and still the story does not pretend this will save him. Instead, it reframes preparation as a way to live fully inside uncertainty. Thetis watches, loving without guarantees. Peleus rules, knowing his son's legacy will outgrow his kingdom. And Achilles himself becomes a study in contrast, calm and fierce, tender and almost unstoppable, human and almost divine. The myth does not ask us to admire him blindly. It asks us to notice the cost of being exceptional. As you listen, you may feel your own expectations soften. The pressure to be flawless, to anticipate every outcome, begins to ease. Achilles' life shows that even near perfection cannot close every door fate leaves ajar, and that realization, paradoxically, is what allows rest. When the illusion of total control fades, the body no longer needs to stay vigilant. It can trust the night to pass without supervision.
Achilles begins to sense, without fully naming it, that his life is moving faster than others around him. Time behaves differently in his presence. Moments feel compressed, sharpened, as if the world knows it must do more with less. This is a quiet theme in Greek myth for sleep. Some lives are not longer or safer, only denser. Achilles feels this density in the way adults watch him, in the way silence gathers when he enters a room, in the way praise arrives already mixed with fear. He is admired not just for what he can do, but for what he is expected to become. And expectations, once placed, are difficult to remove. Thetis understands this better than anyone. She does not warn Achilles away from glory, because she knows resistance would only sharpen its pull. Instead, she teaches him how to live inside the tension, how to be fierce without being careless, how to accept strength without letting it harden into cruelty. Her lessons are not commands, they are tides. They come and go, shaping him slowly. Peleus, watching from the human side of the story, senses another truth. Heroes are rarely allowed to be ordinary. He sees how Achilles' future is already being narrated by others. Songs are forming before deeds. Memory is being prepared in advance. And this preparation, while flattering, is also a theft. It takes away the possibility of anonymity, of quiet obscurity. Achilles' life is never truly his own. For listeners resting in the dark, this part of the myth gently names something many feel but rarely articulate: the exhaustion of being defined too early. Achilles' near invulnerability becomes a symbol not just of power, but of pressure. When others believe you cannot be hurt, they stop protecting you. When others believe you are destined, they stop asking what you want. The myth does not rush to judgment here, it simply observes. Achilles is not resentful, he is focused. He learns to move forward because stillness would only allow the weight of prophecy to settle more heavily. And yet, the story keeps returning to the heel, not as a weakness to be exploited, but as a reminder of proportion,
One small place, untouched by magic, holds the entire narrative in balance. It tells us that even the greatest figures are held together by something fragile. This is deeply calming for the mythology for sleep listener. It means that fragility is not an error in design, it is the design. As Achilles steps closer to the world that will know him by name, the myth subtly prepares us for an ending without rushing us toward it. There is no urgency, only acceptance. Achilles will choose glory, not because he is blind to its cost, but because meaning matters to him more than duration. This choice is not celebrated with fanfare in the bedtime telling. It is treated as a quiet alignment between a person and the story already moving toward him. And in that quiet alignment, the listener is invited to release a familiar anxiety, the need to outlive every risk. Achilles' story suggests that depth can matter as much as length, that presence can outweigh permanence, and that knowing your limits does not diminish your life, it clarifies it.
As the myth drifts closer to its inevitable horizon, it does something unexpected for a story about heroes. It becomes quieter. There is no rush toward war yet, no clash of bronze, no shouting of names across a battlefield. Instead, the focus narrows inward, toward the private spaces where destiny feels less like thunder and more like a low, constant pressure. Achilles is no longer a child, but he is not yet a weapon. He exists in an in-between state, suspended between what he is and what he will be remembered for. This liminal space is essential in myth for sleep because it mirrors the moment just before rest, when the mind has not fully surrendered but has begun to loosen its grip. Thetis senses this moment slipping away. She knows that the time she bought, through water, through fire, through desperate ingenuity, was never meant to last forever. Her love did not cancel the prophecy, it only delayed its arrival. And delay in Greek myth is not failure, it is mercy. Thetis watches Achilles with a gaze that has learned restraint. She no longer tries to outmaneuver fate, she tries to soften it. Her presence becomes less about intervention and more about witness. She listens, she remembers, she allows. This shift is one of the most tender movements in the entire cycle of Greek myths for sleep. It suggests that wisdom is not always knowing how to protect, but knowing when protection has done all it can. Peleus, too, feels the weight of what is coming. As a mortal king, he understands limits. Kingdoms fall, sons grow beyond fathers, stories outlive bodies. He teaches Achilles what he can: respect, proportion, the dignity of choosing one's path even when the options are cruelly constrained. Achilles listens not because he is obedient, but because he is already learning how to hold complexity without panic. He understands, perhaps more clearly than anyone, that his life will not be judged by how long it lasts, but by how fully it is inhabited. This understanding does not make him reckless, it makes him deliberate. For the mythology for sleep listener, this deliberateness is deeply calming. It reframes courage as attentiveness, not bravado. Achilles' near invulnerability recedes into the background here, replaced by something quieter and more human: acceptance without resignation. He does not deny his heel, he does not obsess over it, he simply lives with the knowledge that it exists, and that knowledge, paradoxically, frees him. The myth teaches that fear shrinks when it is acknowledged rather than resisted. Achilles' greatness does not come from pretending he has no limits, it comes from acting meaningfully within them. As the night deepens, this part of the story gently invites the listener to do the same. You do not need to solve tomorrow. You do not need to eliminate every risk. You only need to rest inside the truth of where you are now. Achilles rests in his own way, through stillness,
through preparation, through the quiet confidence that comes from alignment. Thetis rests by letting go. Peleus rests by trusting what he is taught. And the story itself rests, gathering breath before its final understanding. As the final chapter settles, the myth of Achilles releases its last illusion, the idea that destiny is something to defeat. Instead, it offers a quieter conclusion, one suited for night and rest. Achilles does not escape his prophecy, and the story does not pretend that he could have. What it offers instead is a reframing. Destiny is not an enemy stalking from the shadows, but a boundary that gives shape to meaning. Achilles' life becomes luminous precisely because it is finite. His choices matter because time is not endless. Thetis, who once fought fate with fire and water, now understands something deeper. She cannot remove the ending, but she can influence the quality of the middle. And the middle, the living of the days, is where love does its real work. Peleus, standing firmly in the mortal world, accepts that his son will become larger than his protection, larger than his kingdom, larger even than his grief. This acceptance is not cold, it is steady. It allows him to let Achilles go without pretending it does not hurt. Achilles himself steps forward not in ignorance, but in clarity. He knows the cost. He chooses anyway. Not because he is reckless, but because meaning calls louder than fear. In mythology for sleep, this choice is not framed as tragedy alone. It is framed as alignment. Achilles becomes fully himself by agreeing to the shape of his life. And this agreement brings a surprising calm. The myth slows, softens, and turns toward the listener. It suggests that peace does not come from avoiding all endings, but from no longer arguing with the ones we cannot change. Achilles' near invulnerability fades into memory, replaced by something more enduring: presence. He will be remembered not because he could not be wounded, but because he lived intensely within the knowledge that he could. This is the final gift of the story for a restless mind. It tells you that you do not need to be invincible to be at peace. You do not need total control to be safe enough to sleep. Like Thetis, you can love without guarantees. Like Peleus, you can teach and then trust. Like Achilles, you can move forward knowing that limits do not erase meaning, they create it. As the night deepens, the myth gently releases you from vigilance. The prophecies have spoken. The choices have been made. There is nothing left to manage, nothing left to fix. Only breath, steady and slow. Only darkness, doing what it has always done, holding stories until morning. And if these mythology bedtime stories help your body soften and your thoughts quiet, you are welcome to like and subscribe, only if it feels right. For now, let your breathing ease, let the heroes rest, let the gods grow quiet, and allow sleep, unhurried and unforced, to arrive in its own time.